So you've got this great idea. Maybe it's a hobby. You want to go into business. You're really excited. The big question is, will it be financially viable? We've got Brian King, who is a local business attorney for Augusta Business Daily, and I'm Neil Gordon. And Brian, are there any statistics out there for someone who's thinking about going into business?
There are, and you've heard lots of statistics, but the most recent ones that I've seen say that approximately 20% of all businesses fail within the first 2 years, and nearly 50% fail in the first 5 years. And there's several reasons why companies fail, and I can go over a few of the main ones, but sometimes, people think they have a good idea, and it turns out they really don't have a good idea. And one of the things that I do with my clients is sit down with them, and we try to vet that idea before they spend a lot of money and heartbreak over their babies, so to speak, that they are, trying to bring to fruition. So, a lot of times people don't do, say, pro forma projections, and they don't look at what are their costs going to be going forward. They just they think about the revenue that they could be bringing in, but they don't think about the cost. And so that's something I see a lot. And sometimes you talk about I sit down with the clients and talk about the competition that they're going to run into, and the other businesses that are doing the same thing, and how are they going to compete with these bigger companies in trying to take some of that market share.
It's funny you say that. I've noticed covering business stories that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that want to clean your garbage can. Can you imagine that? I might who thought of that?
Right.
I mean, you figure you put your garbage in there and it's gone or whatever, but there must be a market because a lot of different people are in competition.
Yeah, well, time will tell, I guess, with that one. I met that business owner as well. He's not one of my clients.
Okay.
But I kind of wondered about that one. So
exactly.
Don't know all the ins and outs of what he's trying to do.
Yeah. So in this case, you would look at your competition and maybe the number of customers that they might have.
The market share that you think that you could get over a certain period of time, and whether you could survive in terms of getting enough revenue in, enough customers, the customer base to help your business survive. So, which brings me to another point, which is undercapitalization. A lot of businesses start out and they don't have enough money to survive. They've got some 401k money that they're using, or maybe a home equity loan or whatever, but then they run out of funding after a few months, and the business hasn't taken off as quickly as they thought it would, and so then they're left with they've already kind of depleted their funding. They can't get a loan or whatever, and so then they're out of business.
You're kind of in no man's land.
Right.
Do you keep going? Do you put good money after bad, or what have you? And what are some of the hidden expenses that folks may not think about once they get into business?
Well, one of the biggest costs for businesses is labor, and you see it today in today's world, where even McDonald's is paying $10 to $13 an hour, I believe, for people to work there, and so your cost of labor is one of your biggest costs, and you've got all the benefits, employee benefits, health insurance, and you got the payroll taxes and all of that you've got to consider, and it's one reason why McDonald's has moved to the kiosks, where you go in and you order through electronically and don't even really interact with the staff, because they don't have as many staff anymore. Let's see, another reason for business failures is because they lack the proper legal documents that they need. So, in terms of, it goes anywhere from the very beginning, forming the company and not having the appropriate organizational documents, and the operating agreement that says how you're going to be interacting with your partner and all, which, I understand we're going to talk about a little bit today, all the way to the contracts that they have with their vendors and with their customers, and, potential lawsuits that may come about, that where if it's not outlined what the arrangement is, they can be sued and may have to pay damages for certain things. So
we're continuing to speak with Brian King, and online it's businessattorneylaw.com. businessattorneylaw.com. Any other reasons why businesses fail or companies just don't make it after a period of time?
Well, I mean, kind of going back to one of the things we were talking about before about when you're vetting the business. I mean, we talked about the competition and knowing the market, knowing who your customers are going to be. You're having a target audience that you're going to be marketing to, and being able to meet their needs. And if you can meet that demand, then you should be okay. And then, we talked about undercapitalization. Like sometimes companies try to grow too fast. Like maybe they have one location that's starting to do okay, and then they try to open up another location, but then maybe the economy turns down or something like COVID hits. Or
the owner can't be in two places at once.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So you've got to have a really good manager to run the other location or to help you run both locations. And even though labor is your biggest cost, it's also one of your most important factors in running your business, because if you hire the wrong people, they can ruin your business.
True. And lastly, has anyone ever come into your office and they've come to you with an idea, and you've even to the detriment of your business, you've tried to talk them out of going into business?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've done that a few times actually, and yeah, I mean, it would be easy for me to just say, okay, everything's going to be fine, and go ahead and prepare a bunch of documents for them and get paid for that. But if from the get-go we can tell there's a problem, and I asked them several questions and they really haven't thought about some of these things, what I'll do is I'll tell them, look, you need to go think about these things before we move forward, and you let me know whether we can address these things or not, how you're going to address these things before we start forming the company and before we start drafting these contracts. So
he's like a mechanic who gives you good advice and doesn't necessarily fix things that don't need to be fixed, which is very right. Trustworthy of you, and very good to have as an attorney. And again, it's businessattorneylaw.com. J. Brian King, thank you so much for the knowledge.
Welcome.
And we just wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends David and Chris, and they are with Get Up Productions, and all of the social media information is up on the screen if you want to check out some other podcasts such as these that they are doing in case you have some interest. Well, we're continuing our chat with business attorney Brian King, who can be reached businessattorneylaw.com. And the most recent segment, we talked about 3 reasons why most businesses fail, and one of them has to do with partners kind of butting heads.
Right.
Do you feel a bit like a marriage counselor sometimes?
Sometimes I do, yes. I mean, I used to do more litigation than I do right now, and one of the biggest areas of litigation was partnership disputes. People that got crossways, and they're then fighting over this business like it's a child custody battle or something.
Sure.
And it's sometimes you'll have someone who puts in money, and the other guy is kind of operating the business.
Sure.
and after a certain period of time, the person who's running the business says, well, we're doing well now and we're making money. I don't need you anymore. I don't need that backing anymore.
Sure.
And the person who's provided the backing is like, well, it's time for me to reap the rewards now.
Right. Without the backing, you may not have gotten there. So I understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's very important for business partners to have a understanding when they're going into business as to what each of them is going to provide, and how they're going to provide, or how the business is going to provide them rewards later on if the business is successful. And sometimes that means, like maybe the funding guy, maybe he gets bought out at a certain point, with a return on his investment, but it's good to have that thought out beforehand and have an agreement as to how that's going to occur, and how the purchase would occur, and what the purchase price would be, even like what kind of return is having a 2 times return reasonable, or 3, or 1.5, or what makes sense for that business and for those investors, or
Sure.
those business owners. So and so having kind of an understanding. So one, you have an operating agreement that will that will outline, how they're going to operate together, and who's going to have a, whether they're going to have equal vote or whether they're going to have differing voting percentages, and then also the financial percentages as well. When the company earns money, who's going to take more of that money, over time and stuff. So, and then kind of a less formal understanding about the roles of the business owners. And
in our case with Augusta Business Daily LLC, my partner has a role. I have a role. When you sit down with partners, do you find that sometimes the partners work in the business, or is it mostly like he's kind of a silent partner that just brings the money in?
I see both. I mean, I've seen partners who both of them are there day to day, and they're working together, and they're kind of dividing up responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And then I've also seen where some of the partners, more of the maybe more of the funding aspect, but they really just want to have a say on major decisions, like okay, whether we're gonna sell the business or not, or whether we're gonna expand to another location, or
hiring, firing,
that kind of thing. And but otherwise, as long as everything is going okay, they just kind of want to sit on the sidelines and kind of make sure everything is going okay. But it really just depends. I mean, it really just depends on the relation between the business partners and how they want to do things. And it's just good to kind of have that understanding at the very beginning, before either the problems that are coming up or money is starting to be made and they're trying to decide what to do with it.
Sure. So, we're continuing to chat with Brian King. He's a business attorney, not only in the Augusta area, but with an office in Atlanta. And the best thing to do is go online to businessattorneylaw.com, and Brian's also a thought leader on the Augusta Business Daily page, so you can look at a lot of archived podcasts and articles. And I'm just really curious, are most business owners sole proprietors, or are there typically partners in a company?
Well, it really depends on the business. If I don't know the statistics on how many are sole proprietors and how many are partners, but yeah, I mean, I would say this. I mean, if you have a good business idea and you feel like you can accomplish everything on your own and you can run the business yourself, then do that. But if you have someone that you trust, I mean, that's the biggest issue with partners is you've got to be able to trust them and be able to come to understandings with them, and feel like you can work with them, because you may be, like you said, married to these people for years and years. And
that's right.
So, if you can find that kind of person and have that kind of relationship, then it's great, and you can have a lot of fun together, and and make money together.
We'll leave it there. That's a great way, I suppose, to wrap it up. And hey, we want to just mention that we're here today as a service of the folks at Get Up Productions, Augusta Podcasts, and they're in downtown Augusta, headquartered here, and they can do podcasts really anywhere. And the point of the matter is, if you're an organization or a company and you'd like to have a long-form way to get some concepts out there and inform folks a little bit more than a 30-second soundbite, they may be of help to you, and all of their information is up on the screen. We are rejoined by business attorney Brian King with offices in Augusta and also Atlanta. How are you today,
Doing
sir?
Well, thanks.
Good. It's often been mentioned, one of the benefits of going into business is if you have a home and you have cars and you're married and with family, you don't want there to be problems with people coming after your personal assets. Is that still true?
That's right. I mean, so a lot of people will just really form nothing and just call themselves a sole proprietorship, and they have no protection. So their personal assets are on the hook when they are running a business. But so what I do, one of the things that I do with my clients is we form an LLC or a corporation to run the business out of, and that does protect their personal assets from their business assets and their business dealings. So, it's one of it's like I sometimes will tell my clients. I mean, it's one of the cheapest forms of insurance that you can buy. I mean, it's not really insurance, but it's a protection. And that the law is saying, if you follow these procedures when you open up a company, the state is saying we are going to provide you this legal protection. And so, and it's not expensive to do that. And you get a tremendous amount of protection. So being able to, getting a good business attorney to get it all set up for you properly, and then have all your documentation in place so that if you are sued, you can show that documentation, and that documentation protects you. That's the very first thing you need to do. So, as in starting a business.
Yeah, I was wondering, what are the type of situations you're protected from if you are in business when you say you're sued? Like, share maybe an example of something that's happened, I suppose.
Well, let's say, I'll give you an example of something that you can't be protected from, and then tell you what you can.
Good.
So you can always be sued individually for something that you do yourself. So like imagine like a surgeon who is operating on someone. It doesn't matter if he has 50 LLCs. If he were to commit negligence when he's operating on you and causes damage, then that doctor can be sued.
Right. Medical malpractice.
Right. Medical malpractice. Yeah. Right. So it's not gonna. So the LLC, him having a bunch of LLCs is not going to protect him from what he does personally. But if, let's say, for example, he enters into a contract with a hospital to do certain things, and it's between his LLC and the hospital, then the hospital, if there's a breach of contract, the hospital can sue his LLC, but can't sue him personally and get to his personal assets. So there's contract law protection there.
Okay.
Then also, let's say you're running a business, and let's say it's a retail store, and you have to send one of your employees out to go buy a certain item to be able to replenish your inventory or something. Okay. Well, that employee, say he's driving a vehicle, he drives to the store, and on the way he runs over someone and kills them.
Wow.
Okay. So now that employee can be sued individually because that
his negligence, right? Similar to the doctor.
That's right. And then because he was on a business trip, business endeavor, then the business can be sued and be held liable if there was a negligence that may have led to that. Maybe the guy who ran over someone didn't have a driver's license, and the business let him go out without checking to see whether he had a business license. That negligent entrustment of the vehicle to the person who shouldn't have been driving anyway. So, but the business owner would still be protected individually,
right?
As long as he wasn't involved in that transaction.
Can't lose his house,
right
over it.
So
but could be hurt business wise.
Well, it could be hurt business wise in terms of maybe there's negative publicity because of this, and if for example the business manager if he let someone drive the car who shouldn't have been driving the company vehicle, then that could be a problem. So from a publicity standpoint and all of that, right?
Sure. Yeah. Brian King handles all these issues on a daily basis and can be reached. A good way to sort of look him up is to go online. BusinessAttorneyLaw.com. Business Attorney Law. That's what I said. BusinessAttorneyLaw.com. And Brian, I've heard the expression pierce the company shield.
Pierce the corporate veil.
Corporate veil.
Right.
I'm sorry. What does that mean?
So it means that if you don't have the proper documentation set up for your company and all, and let's say that, for example, there are several reasons or several ways that a court may say that a plaintiff in a lawsuit who in suing a company might be able to pierce a corporate veil, and sort of get at the personal assets of the owner of the company. And so one is not having the proper documentation set up and all of that. Another would be if let's say the bank account of the business and the personal bank account of the business owner are being treated intermingled. The funds are being intermingled, and and they're sort of using the business account as their personal bank account to go buy groceries and other things. Right. Then, so the issue there is the company is not being treated as a separate legal entity. The business and his personal look the same basically, and so if you don't operate the business properly, the court can say, look, you may have formed a company, but you never used it as a separate entity. You're using it as your own personal bank account, and we're going to allow the plaintiff to pierce the corporate veil and come in and get your personal assets.
Okay. And again, business attorney law. BusinessAttorneyLaw.com is Brian's website. He has offices in Augusta and also the Atlanta area. Brian, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And again, a quick shout out to the folks at Get Up Productions. All the social media platforms are up on the screen. The best thing you may want to do is just check out some other podcasts, may give you some ideas on how to grow your business as well. Pleased to be rejoined by attorney Brian King, and it's BusinessAttorneyLaw.com, BusinessAttorneyLaw.com. And excuse me, Brian's been helping clients now for 20 years, and I'm sure that when people come to you, one of the first questions is probably, how do I form my company, and what choices do I have, and what do you usually tell them?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's several business entities that you could form, but the most often chosen and usually the best is going to be the LLC, limited liability company, and they came about in the 80s and became very popular, and they have the same limited liability protection as the corporation does, but a lot more flexibility in how you can set them up, how you can establish relations among the partners as far as financial rights and voting rights and that sort of thing. So it's kind of become the preferred legal entity to use now. And with corporations, I mean, we still have people that want to do corporations sometimes. I mean, and then sometimes, C corps, particularly if they were wanting to do an IPO later on and that sort of thing, and be traded on the stock exchanges, that sort of thing. But usually those are bigger companies, and then you have S corps, which you can even have an LLC that's taxed as an S corp, so you can still use the LLC framework and just change the way it's taxed.
Do you ever involve CPAs in these distinctions?
Yes, I do. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll contact the accountant after the meeting with the client and just make sure that we're on the same page. Sometimes the client doesn't realize that their accountant's already filed a S-election, like say if they have an existing entity, and we're talking about doing some changes. Well, I want to make sure that the accountant hasn't done something that the client wasn't aware of, because they just forgot. They don't realize that, because sometimes they don't realize that their accountant, how they're filing their taxes. Right. So I do like to make sure that the accountant and I are on the same page before I do anything.
Sure. And again, Brian King can be reached at BusinessAttorneyLaw.com, BusinessAttorneyLaw.com, if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm curious of something. I mean, sometimes I have gotten like a check for my marketing services, and it'll say something like Phil Smith doing business as Joe's Copy Machine Company. What does the DBA mean?
So the DBA is doing business as, and so sometimes there'll be maybe a company name, let's just say XYZ LLC, but they want to do business as Joe's Computer Shop, or whatever. So to get a DBA properly in Georgia, you have to file a trade name registration statement. with the county where you're doing business in, and you have to. It basically links the company name, the LLC name, with the
corporation
DBA.
or DBA.
With the corporation, the LLC or corporation with the doing business as name that you're using, because there has to be this notice that if someone is dealing with this name, that they are also dealing with an LLC or a corporation. So that trade name registration statement ties those together and allows you to operate legally and still have the protection that you have gotten when you formed your company.
Gotcha.
You know, if you're operating as a DBA and you haven't filed the trade name registration statement, and you know, then people don't know they're dealing with anybody but yourself personally. And they're going to be suing you personally.
Liability.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Would branding run into this as far as the DBA as well?
Well, it can. So if if you want to brand the company name and all of that, then and it's different from your LLC name, then you're going to have that trade name registration statement filed, and then there's publish it in the paper as well as part of that process and stuff as well. So, but yeah, I mean it's but you can also do branding through trademarks. We can file federal trademarks for certain brands and logos and the names, but the owner of those marks is the LLC or the company name.
Gotcha.
So it's a slightly different issue than the DBA.
Yeah, I remember one time there were some family members involved, and they owned the franchise of Kentucky Fried Chicken back in the day, but it was really interesting. It was something like Three Fry Kings LLC, doing business as Kentucky Fried, because you wouldn't want to call yourself Three Fry Kings to the community.
Actually,
right?
with franchises like that, the franchisor doesn't want you to have, say, Kentucky Fried Chicken in your name. They're going to, or Chick-fil-A or whatever franchise. You have to use the DBA, because they want you to have a different name other than their corporate name for the franchisor.
Yeah.
So yes, and then I've done that a lot where I represent franchisees who are setting up franchises, and we file the trade name registration.
Sure. Just put you on the spot here. What is, and I know every situation is different, but what's a fair range of cost that somebody should expect if they want to file a trademark and protect their name, or if they want to get kind of set up? I mean, is it a few $1,000s? I mean, how does
I'll try to break it down a little bit. So when we talked about the DBA, I mean, the filing fee in Georgia is around $200 and something, I think, somewhere around there. And then there's maybe takes an hour of time. So,
gotcha. Yep.
And then with a trademark, there's the filing fee of about $250 if you do the TEAS plus, or TEAS plus is what they call it. But if you have to fall within certain qualifications to meet that. But anyway, $250, and if you don't, it's $350, I believe, if you file under other.
Sure.
But anyway, that takes a couple hours of time or so to do that, depending on and working with the client and make sure they've gotten you all the information that you need to file it and all that. So, and then for the formation of the legal entity to run their company and all the documents, so you got the single member LLC, which is just the sole one person running the company. And then you've got your multi-member LLC, and of course it takes more time if you've got several partners in the company, and so that can run more, and the operating agreements are going to be more detailed and longer, and so so it costs more for the multi-member,
right?
But I would say anywhere from a couple of hours of time to 3, 4, 5 hours of time, depending on the complexity and what we decide to do.
And if they'll buy you lunch, you won't charge for the consultation, right?
Maybe sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. He's a good guy. Just best thing to do to get started is just go to the website, businessattorneylaw.com, businessattorneylaw.com. He is Brian King. He's been doing this for 20 years. Highly recommend him, and happy to have him as the attorney for Augusta Business Daily, LLC. Thank you.